Imagine the moment you reach for that extra latte, and a silent alarm rings in your mind, counting down the years you'll have to work. You see a luxury coffee, a spontaneous weekend trip, a new gadget, and then a spreadsheet flashing years to financial independence, jumping from 27 to 31. What if every time you treat yourself, you're actually buying more years of work? That question hits hard because it touches the core of why we chase freedom in the first place. We all know the feeling of scrolling through endless feeds of friends on exotic vacations, smiling faces on beach sunsets, and sleek cars gliding down coastal highways. A sigh escapes as you glance at your own retirement calculator, the numbers staring back like a distant horizon you're not sure you'll ever reach. It's a tug-of-war between the immediate thrill of pleasure and the long-term promise of early retirement. In the next few minutes, we'll untangle that knot and give you a clear path to enjoy life now while still marching toward financial independence. First, let's define the two worlds we're juggling.
On one side sits pleasure spending, the discretionary money you allocate for fun, experiences, and the little luxuries that make life feel richer.
On the other side is the FIRE movement, a community of people who aim to accumulate enough assets through saving and investing to retire early and live off passive income. The tension exists because every dollar you spend on a night out is a dollar you're not investing. And because the power of compounding works like a snowball that grows faster the more you feed it. At the same time, our brains are wired to chase instant rewards, a trait that made our ancestors survive but now can sabotage our financial goals. There are two common myths that keep people stuck. The first is the belief that you must become a monk, living on ramen and counting every cent to ever achieve FIRE. The second is the notion that you can't enjoy life until you're retired, as if the journey itself is a barren road. Both extremes are false.
You don't need to sacrifice every pleasure, and you don't need to wait for a distant freedom to start living meaningfully.
The sweet spot lies somewhere in the middle, where you can savor experiences without derailing your long-term plan. To help you find that balance, we'll walk through a 3-step framework that blends psychology, numbers, and practical habits.
By the end of this segment, you'll have a simple calculator in your mind, a real-world example to follow, and a personal pleasure index you can start using today.
But before we dive into the numbers, let's understand why our brains love the instant reward, even when the long-term cost is huge. Our brains are wired for the present.
When you make a purchase, dopamine floods the reward centers, creating a feeling of pleasure that reinforces the behavior.
This dopamine loop is powerful. It tells you that the coffee, the concert ticket, the new phone are all worth the price.
Meanwhile, the future benefits of investing that same money are abstract, delayed, and therefore feel less real.
This is called temporal discounting, the tendency to value immediate rewards more highly than future ones. It's why a small, immediate pleasure can outweigh a much larger, delayed gain in our minds. Social proof adds another layer. Seeing friends post about their latest adventure triggers a fear of missing out, nudging you to spend in order to keep up. The more you compare, the more you rationalize that a splurge is necessary for happiness. Yet research shows that after the initial thrill, the happiness boost fades quickly, a phenomenon known as hedonic adaptation. You'll soon find yourself needing the next purchase to recapture that fleeting high. Now, let's bring this back to your financial journey. Imagine you have a monthly income of $4,000 and you allocate $1,000 to savings and investments. If you instead spend an extra $200 on a weekend getaway, that $200 is no longer compounding. Over a 30-year horizon, assuming a modest annual return of 7%, that $200 could have grown to well over $100,000. That's the hidden cost of each pleasure purchase, and it adds up quickly.
But here's the good news. You don't have to eliminate all pleasure. The key is to be intentional about where you spend and to align those choices with your values.
This is where the pleasure index comes in. It's a simple mental checklist. Ask yourself, does this experience bring lasting joy, deepen relationships, or create a memory I'll cherish?
If the answer is yes, the spend is more likely to be worth the trade-off.
If it's a fleeting impulse, it probably isn't. Let's walk through a quick example. Sarah, A 30-year-old software engineer, loves traveling but also wants to retire by 50. She decides to allocate 50% of her income to investments, but she also sets aside a fun fund of $500 each month.
She uses that fund for trips, concerts, and gadgets, but only after she's met her savings target for the month.
By doing this, she satisfies her desire for experiences while still keeping her investment trajectory on track.
Over 10 years, her investments grow, and her fun fund allows her to enjoy life now, creating a balanced approach.
Now, think about your own spending habits. Which purchases feel like true investments in your happiness, and which are just quick fixes? What do you think about this?
Let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear your perspective.
In the next part, we'll dive deeper into the numbers, showing you how to calculate the true cost of a purchase, how to set up a realistic budget that includes pleasure, and how to adjust your plan as life changes.
Stay with me, because the tools we'll explore next can turn the dilemma of pleasure spending into a clear, manageable strategy that brings you both joy today and freedom tomorrow. If this is blowing your mind, hit that subscribe button and smash that like, because the best is yet to come.
Now let's pull out the calculator and see exactly how a single impulse can ripple through the rest of your financial life. Imagine you're eyeing a new smartwatch that costs $500. You could pay cash today, but what you're really doing is pulling $500 out of the pool that would otherwise be compounding for the rest of your working years. If you assume a modest annual return of 7%, that $500 would grow to roughly $24,000 by the time you hit your target retirement age. That's the hidden opportunity cost of a momentary thrill. To make this concrete, grab a piece of paper or open a spreadsheet and write down 3 columns: the price of the item, the expected annual return on your investments, and the number of years you plan to stay in the workforce. Multiply the price by the compound factor for each year left, and you'll see the future value of the money you're spending now. It sounds a bit math-heavy, but you only need to do it once for each major purchase category, and then you can reference those numbers whenever you're tempted. Next, let's talk about building a budget that actually respects both your desire for pleasure and your FIRE goals. The classic rule of thumb is to allocate 50% of your after-tax income to investments, 25% to essential living costs,
and the remaining 25% to discretionary spending.
That last slice is your fun fund, the same bucket Sarah used in her example. The key is to treat that fun fund as non-negotiable, just like your mortgage or rent payment. When the month rolls around, you first meet your savings target, then you allocate the fun fund, and only after those 2 steps do you consider any extra spending. One common mistake is to let the fun fund become a catch-all for everything that isn't a bill. That's why the pleasure index is so useful. Before you click Add to Cart, pause and ask 3 simple questions. Does this experience create a lasting memory? Does it deepen a relationship? Does it align with a core value you hold dear?
If you can answer yes to at least 2 of those, the purchase passes the index and moves into your fun fund.
If not, it stays on the back burner, and you can revisit it later when you have a surplus. Let's walk through a day in the life of someone who uses the index.
Maya wakes up, checks her bank app, and sees that she's hit her investment goal for the month. She then transfers $300 into her fun fund.
Later, she sees a flyer for a weekend cooking class with a friend she's been meaning to spend more time with. She asks herself the 3 index questions.
The class will create a shared memory. It will deepen her friendship, and it aligns with her love of culinary exploration.
2 out of 3 boxes are checked, so she books the class, confident that the expense is an investment in her happiness, not a drain on her future. Now, what happens when life throws a curveball? Maybe you get a promotion, maybe you face an unexpected medical bill, or maybe you decide to move to a new city. The beauty of a flexible budget is that you can rebalance the percentages without breaking the overall plan. If your income jumps, you can increase the investment slice while keeping the fun fund at the same absolute amount, preserving the habit of intentional spending. If you encounter a large, unavoidable expense, you can temporarily dip into a rainy day reserve that sits alongside your fun fund, but you should aim to replenish it as soon as possible to keep the long-term trajectory intact. A practical tool for this is the rolling buffer method. Set aside a small percentage of each paycheck, say 5%, into a separate account earmarked for emergencies. This buffer grows over time and provides a safety net, so you never have to sacrifice your investment plan or your fund when surprise costs arise. When the buffer reaches a comfortable level, perhaps 3 to 6 months of living expenses, you can treat it as a solid foundation and focus on scaling up your investments and
discretionary spending in tandem.
Let's bring the numbers back into focus with a longer-term scenario. Suppose you earn a steady after-tax income of $4,000 per month. You allocate $2,000 to investments, $1,000 to essential costs, and $500 to your fund, leaving $500 for variable expenses like groceries and transportation.
Over a year, that fund adds up to $6,000, which you can spend on experiences that truly matter.
Meanwhile, the $2,000 you invest each month compounds, and after 20 years of consistent contributions,
you'll have amassed a nest egg that comfortably supports early retirement.
The math shows that you don't have to sacrifice joy for wealth. You just need to be deliberate about where each dollar goes. Another powerful concept is value stacking. This means you look for ways to combine pleasure with financial benefit.
For example, instead of buying a gym membership you never use, you could join a community sports league that provides both exercise and social connection.
Or you could take a weekend road trip that doubles as a networking opportunity for your career.
By stacking value, you get multiple returns on a single expense, making the hidden cost calculation even more favorable.
Now, let's address the emotional side of this journey.
It's natural to feel a pang of guilt when you spend on yourself,
especially when you've been conditioned to think that every dollar should be working for you. The trick is to reframe the narrative. You are not stealing from your future.
You are investing in the present version of yourself, which in turn fuels the energy and motivation you need to stay disciplined over the long haul.
When you treat pleasure as a strategic component rather than a reckless indulgence,
you remove the internal conflict and replace it with a sense of empowerment.
A quick mental exercise can help solidify this mindset.
At the end of each week, write down 3 things you enjoyed that week, whether it was a good meal, a conversation with a friend, or a small purchase that brought you joy.
Then, reflect on how those experiences contributed to your overall well-being and whether they aligned with your values. Over time, you'll start to see patterns emerge.
And you'll become better at selecting the experiences that truly enrich your life.
Let's circle back to Sarah's story for a moment. After a few years of following her fund plan, she realized that some of her trips were becoming routine and no longer sparked the same excitement.
She adjusted her index criteria, focusing more on unique cultural experiences and less on repeat destinations.
She also started a side hustle that allowed her to allocate a small portion of extra earnings directly into her
investment account, accelerating her path to early retirement.
By staying flexible and regularly revisiting her priorities,
Sarah kept both her happiness and her financial trajectory on track. If you're wondering how to start implementing these ideas today, here's a simple 3-step action plan.
First, calculate your current discretionary spending by reviewing the past 3 months of bank statements. Second, set a realistic fund amount based on a percentage of your after-tax income,
and move that money into a separate account that you only use for intentional purchases. Third,
create a quick checklist, your personal pleasure index, and keep it on your phone so you can reference it before any non-essential spend. Follow these steps for a month,
and you'll already have a clearer picture of where your money is going and how it aligns with your long-term goals.
As you experiment with this framework, you'll likely discover that some expenses you thought were essential are actually optional,
while others you dismissed as frivolous turn out to be high-impact experiences.
That insight is the real power of the pleasure index. It forces you to evaluate each spend through the lens of lasting value rather than immediate gratification. Before we wrap up, I want to hear from you. Think about the last time you bought something on a whim. Did it bring you lasting joy, or did it fade quickly?
Drop a comment below sharing that story and how you might apply the index to future decisions.
Your experiences can help others see the practical side of balancing pleasure and financial independence.
If you've found this deep dive useful, consider sharing the video with a friend who's also on the FIRE journey.
the more people who learn to spend intentionally.
The easier it becomes to build a community that values both freedom and fulfillment. And of course, if you're enjoying the content, give it a thumbs up and stay subscribed so you don't miss the next episode,
where we'll explore advanced strategies for optimizing tax efficiency while still keeping room for the things you love. Remember, the goal isn't to become a hermit who never enjoys life, but to craft a roadmap where every dollar works toward a future that feels both secure and vibrant.
By marrying the science of compounding with the art of mindful enjoyment,
You can create a life that's rich in experiences now and free from financial constraints later.
keep experimenting, stay curious,
And let the pleasure index be your compass as you navigate the path to early retirement without sacrificing the
moments that make life worth living.